Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and
Boom!
we broke comic boom. All right, so listen, we're about to do a 5 pet peeves, 5 gripes, 5 bitch slaps for some of the problems that I have with freaking comic books and a little bit beyond comic books. The trick is, since there's 2 of us, we got 5 each. So yay, double the pleasure, double the fun. You remember the Double Mint commercials?
Yeah, double boom.
The double boom.
It's going to be a double boom rant. Double boom rant. Ranting going on today. A lot of rant. A lot of ranting.
All right, all right, all right. So since you're the guest, what do you say? You want to go first or want me to go first?
I don't care. Well, I mean, you're hosting.
I'll go first. So I'll go first. So I have a problem with continuity. Oh, that's right. The thing that bothers me the most about the fact that we don't have that much continuity anymore, and let's be realistic, back in the day when we were all getting into the comic books, and I'm talking like back from the creation of just Marvel alone, all right? You had like, I'm reading Tales of Suspense. Oh, and I'm reading this comic book over here with freaking, whatever. If in DC at the time, if you wanted to see like, heroes crossing over, you had to read the Justice League. You know what I'm saying? But aside from that, besides just the idea of Avengers, no. You actually had the idea that Angel could show up in the Tales of Suspense and hang out with Iron Man. Hey, Captain America and Iron Man are both in Tales of Suspense. They could cross over with each other. They cross over with comic books all over the place. When the Hulk got canceled, he was beating up everybody. Like, it was a freaking great time, and that never stopped until it did. And I'm really bothered that it stopped. And the only thing that bothers me more than not having continuity is writers getting on Twitter talking about, all the fans who still want continuity. You got to understand that you don't know how to write anymore, because people used to know how to write continuity. Okay, this is going to be a very stressful event.
No, I agree. You're done your initial rant.
Oh yeah.
I need to add to it. I just got to add to it because it's 100. I agree 100%. And I get this. I have this thing where if you're a talented writer, if you're worth your grain of salt, if you're worth the paycheck you're being given, you've been given the opportunity of a lifetime, and you're telling me that your great idea that you've spent your lifetime thinking about is going to be ruined because an editor comes up and says, oh, by the way, you got to tweak this and you got to tweak that because we got 50 years of continuity with this mythological character called Superman or Batman or Avengers or Galactus or Silver Surfer or Thor. I mean, if you don't have the creativity and the ability to twist it and make it work, well, then I got news for you. This guy's named Donny Cates. There's Jeff Johns. Man, if you can't bark with the dogs, brother, get off the porch.
That's right. At the end of the day, if your great story, I was going to add on to what you said specifically, if your great story exists in a vacuum, it's called Elseworlds. It's called What If.
That's right.
We don't need your stories in mainstream comic books. I'm standing by that. Stamp of approval. All right. What's your next one?
Well, mine is a little, it's related to comic books. It's also related to the mainstream pop culture. And that is the stunning stupidity of mainstream Star Wars fans. Good grief. I can't believe it. I mean, look, I love me some Star Wars here. I really do. Star Wars is great, but maybe I'm an outlier on this, but for God's sakes, we just finished talking about if you're really creative, you shouldn't be hindered by continuity. Well, let me just say this. If you're such a good goddamn Star Wars writer, how come you keep focusing on the prequels? How can you keep focusing on the past? Can we move forward? Maybe a little bit, and keep reinterpreting everything to death. I mean, the prequels, I don't care. The prequels, for example, were terrible. I mean, Tim Filoni, this great, I don't know if you saw this. Tim Filoni goes on, he re-explains the relationship between Qui-Gon and Anakin Skywalker when he's young, and everybody's having a geekasm because he's so brilliant and they see the movie in a different way. And I'm saying to them, no, you don't see the movie. It's still a shitty movie. He's telling you something that is nonsense. If that was actually the case, if Qui-Gon was a fatherly figure, if any of that garbage was true, it wouldn't have been a shitty movie. It's garbage in, garbage out. I mean, this idea that somehow a guy 25, 30 years later is going to come and give you a nice little poetic speech. He was beautiful speech, by the way. Beautiful. Mr. Filoni, you did a great job. But let's not forget the stench of something. I mean, garbage in is garbage. So rather than getting us a new Star Wars stories, we have to reinterpret reinterpret and get some pretentious guy on Star Wars that everybody's having a geekasm more to re-explain to us a movie that we've already seen 1,000 times? Come on. Anyways.
So garbage in, garbage out. Is that the same for the flux capacitor?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. You don't have to go 88 miles an hour to get rid of it either.
Oh wow. Anyway, I guess this is on the most recent Star Wars gallery that's on the Disney Plus.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, the example of Mr. Filoni, I think it's Tim Filoni is his first name. Yeah, he was explaining to people the
Dave Filoni.
Is it Dave Filoni?
I think it's Dave Filoni. Whatever. Yeah. We're probably both wrong. People are yelling at us right now in the chat. You got to get everything right. We're going to get to this. You got to get everything right with people who watch YouTube. Otherwise, they're going to be like, he doesn't know anything. Got the first name wrong.
Well, you gotta. I don't mind. Again, I don't mind maybe seeing things through a different person's eyes, but I really have a problem where, people who've been, basically shitting on something for a long time and then suddenly saying that, oh my God, now they suddenly think that it's a good movie.
Because of somebody's headcanon, mind you.
Well, exactly. And it's total headcanon. It's total nonsense is what it is. I mean, if you don't, in my view, it's sort of like, it's like the movie Prometheus, I mean, which I think is a badly put together movie, but, there's all kinds of ways that I can re-explain it in that might, and by explaining what scenes were supposed to be. Same thing with Final Crisis. I can rattle off a bunch of DC comic events that were garbage that if they'd been done right, that's often the case when you re-explain something, it's better in the re-explanation than it was when you actually saw it. But I just get frustrated. And, one thing about Star Wars fans, it doesn't matter if you've been a Star Wars fan for 20 years or one day, the person who's a Star Wars fan for 1 day or 5 minutes knows more than you do. That's what I love about it. I love that. That's just great. Yeah, educate me. Go ahead and educate me, Mr. 1 day-year-old Star Wars fan. Yes.
At the end of the day, I'm cool with different opinions, comments, and all that stuff too. It's the guys who are just like absolute perfectionists. If you get if you get the pronunciation of something wrong, you don't know anything. It's like you're an extremist. You're an extremist. You are one step away from joining ISIS. Like, but hey, man. So I never saw Prometheus, by the way, but I will say that having a headcanon explanation, even by somebody who's writing some of this stuff, like, come on, man. If it's not explained the right way in the beginning, if it's not explained to fruition in the beginning, if you have to put headcanon to something, or, well, what Lucas originally meant, I'm glad that you had yourself a conversation with Mr., George Lucas. I got his name right. It's George. It's not John. It's George Lucas. Yeah. But like, for crying out loud, man, if he wasn't able to explain it in the movie, then I don't want to hear about, the way this such and such was supposed to be. Plus, that stuff's been changed all the time, every time anyway. Was Darth Maul really meant to live? Yeah. Was he really meant to live? I'm glad
he was chopped in half. He was chopped in half, and they brought him back.
Yeah. Yeah, just at the end of the day, hey, man, you gotta, right? So I'm really glad they did a bunch of things. Hey, Charles Soule fixed up a bunch of things about the whole midi-chlorian thing. But at the end of the day, look, man, and I will say this to add on to the thing that you said in the very beginning of this rant, when you try to base your new headcanon or whatever on the prequels, we're going to run into problems. Because it's just shown, it's evident, it's been shown from time and time again until it's not. But for now, it's pretty evident that basing things off the prequels is not the way to go. When you base things off of the original series, episode 4, 5, and 6, however you want to do it, like The Mandalorian, there's some people who sure don't like The Mandalorian. Cool. But more people are liking The Mandalorian than they're liking anything else that's been put out in the past 10, 15 years. So there's that. I mean, everything else might as well be the holiday special. Yeah, that's right. I brought up the holiday special because I'm gangsta like that.
So you talking about the Star Wars Christmas special?
Yeah, that one.
Oh yes. we get to go to Chewbacca's planet. That was a classic.
Yeah, it was supposed to be called Kashyyyk, but they wound up calling it originally Kashyyyk. I'm saying that's a retcon.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they called it Kashyyyk in the Christmas special, holiday special, whatever it was called. But they later named it to Kashyyyk. All right. So
What's
let's
your
talk about
next one?
yeah, my next one, my number two.
Oh.
Well, my number two, because you only gave your number one. My number two is editor's notes. What's up, peeps? Back in the day, we used to have editor's notes. So if you're reading something, you're like, wait, what? Oh, wait, there's an asterisk there. Not to worry. This tells me which comic book to go back and read. Maybe it was a recent one. Maybe it was one from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. See what I just did there? But at the end of the day, you know where to find that comic book. So it gave you a reason to go back to your local comic book store and dig through that dollar bin or whatever and try and find the comic book. And all of a sudden, it's now drumming up more business because those dollar bins, whatever. Sometimes it's like but if you buy 10, you can get it for $9 or 12, and you get it for 10, something like that. So it's giving you a reason to solicit your comic book store more. It's giving you a reason to buy more comics. Maybe it's to go online and find the comic book through the apps and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it gave you some kind of reference to go and find out more about that particular story. It also happens to show that you understand at least a little something about the continuity. I'm saying. Over to you.
Yeah. Well, you're bitching about the disappearance of editor's notes, right? And I agree. I absolutely agree. Because this falls under the heading also of the self-pretension of the writers. Because for some reason, I don't know what it is. You hear different explanations or justifications for it. That, well, number one, my story doesn't need it. Or I want to give, I don't want to clutter up that beautiful little, that box where the artist is showing off. And I don't want to, it disrupts the flow of the reading, which I always find ironic, particularly if it's a writer like Bendis saying this. This is a writer who disrupts his own comic book through his own dialogue, for God's sakes. And he's upset about an editor's note here and there. And it's editor's notes are crucial. I remember reading them when I was young. I look back at them fondly. I also have, this is another topic. I won't get into it, but I actually think that I think that the strategic use of a thought balloon once in a while is not a bad idea either. A lot of writers are very much against that. They think it's a sign of bad writing because, you should leave it to the artist, and to convey what somebody's thinking, you shouldn't have to spell it out for the reader, despite the fact that they did that for 50 or 60 years in comics before I think, what was it, Watchmen? I think Watchmen wasn't it one of the first that took away the thought balloon, and everybody wanted to duplicate Alan Moore, get rid of the thought balloons or something. Anyways, I absolutely agree. I don't mind. To me, an editor's notes, it pulls you into the world, it educates you, and it says, "Hi, you like the story so far? If you're then this is where you can go. Are you a little confused right now?" Which happens from time to time. Not a problem. Here's an editor's note. It was a beautiful thing, and again, it showed that like you said something very important, that the writer has a sense of self-awareness that maybe the story is potentially more complex than can be told in simply one comic book.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I think, what's your number two?
My number two. Okay, now I want to be clear because I'm going to offend probably some people that might be watching this, but I want people to understand that I'm ranting against myself when I do this, because I am guilty of everything I'm going to rant about. But here we go. So bear in mind, I'm a hypocrite saying this, but I don't care. It has to be said. The abject stupidity of the comic book speculation market. Okay, now, let me explain something. How, in case you're wondering how the comic book market works, this is how it works. Take, for example, Batman issue 91, which is maybe either the cameo or the first appearance of Punchline. It doesn't matter, right? It really doesn't matter, because all you need is hype. You need spec. Now, it's worth noting that all the things that are illegal in the stock market are in fact legal in the comic book industry. This is very, very interesting. Now, let me give you an example. Now, I'm going to appeal to everyone's common sense. All right, 80,000 issues of Batman are sold. All right, on day one. On day two, 19 retards on eBay spend $20 buying a comic book that, had they gone to their comic shop a day before, they could have got for $3.99. But enter the comic book speculator, the expert who's been in the industry for 30 years. i.e. out of high school and still has his comic collection thanks to his mom and dad not burning it. All right. He goes on eBay and he sees that 19 people, idiots, retards, have spent $20 on a $3.99 comic. He takes out his calculator and does a magical formula that hasn't been revealed yet. And he concludes magically that there's been a 175% increase in sales. And he reports this on an app. Now, this app goes by many names. I won't say it. But suddenly people think, oh my God, there's 80,000 comic books out there. 80,000 people. They're sold out. Comic books are sold out. But 19 people on eBay paid $20. 19 retards. We now have the formation of a retard bubble. The retard bubble is now this small. All right. But what happens is retards tend to go. It's a phenomenon, particularly. This happens particularly on the planet Earth. Natives to the planet Earth have a lot of retards, and retards tend to grow exponentially. So what happens is you see 19 retards spend $20. The next day, that doubles. And then by the end of the month, you could have potentially 30, 40,000 people spending $20 for that same comic. It's absolutely insanity. Absolute insanity. It's all hype. It's all nonsense. It defies math. And they look at sales on eBay, and the sales on eBay are so small. 40 sales. 40 morons spend $20 and they think that it's worth this. But everybody buys it. Everybody buys into the hype. And everybody hoards their comic books and puts it in the corner. I know, because I do it. I'm a retard too. I hate it. I hate it. I need help. This is why I need therapy. Why am I in this? Of all the hobbies I could have chosen, I picked the one that defies math. It makes no sense. This is a ridiculous hobby, and I just want to throw out some phrases. It's very important. I'm gonna throw out some phrases of schemes that are illegal in the stock market. You've heard of a pump and dump scheme? It's a pump and dump scheme in the stock market is where it's part of a complex grand plan of market manipulation on targeted security. The perpetuators are usually stock promoters. They convince certain companies to release shares into a free trading status as payment for services promoting the security. Okay, now how does that work in the comic book? Well, a pump and dump in comic book is, well, you get an oversupply shipped to a retailer, and the retailer holds back and doesn't put out all the comic books, right? Because the hype. Remember the effect that those 19 retards have. Because the timing of the 19 retards is important, because the retailers overorder, or the comic book companies in a scheme overship to the retailer. Enter the retards. Day 2. Day 1, overship. Day 2, 19 retards in eBay, pay $20. And by the way, these 19 retards might not be retards. They could be the same people in the same geographical area, because no one ever bothers to scrutinize who's buying the comics. Bear that in mind. Now, that's day 2. Day 3, now the retailers see this, so they list on eBay too. So 19 retards can do it. They can get more. So then you have the dump. So you got the pump, and then you have the dump. That's illegal in the stock market. It's not in the comic book industry. You also have something called runs at the stock market. Completely illegal. Run is when a group of traders create activity or rumors in order to drive the price of security up. This is the hype. You create false rumors in order to drive up hype. Now, this is a gray area of the law. I'm certainly not going to go into it, but suffice to say, I'm not an expert on it anyway, but you get my point. That's called hype. That's what we do in the comic industry. You can create false hype. There is a limit to the type of hype and bullshit that you can get away with in the stock market, but this happens in comic books all the time. Cornering the market. Cornering the market, again, creating a monopoly. You can see how they corner the market, overship in a certain area. Cornering the market, if you're a larger comic book retailer, you get more of the variance, right? You order more, you get more of the variance. Also, the wash trade. A wash trade is where a manipulator sells and repurchases the same or substantially the same security for the purposes of generating activity and increasing the price. So, two large retailers can reorder, can time the reorders in such a way to create the hype, particularly if they got the connections to the media, comic book resources, Newsarama. Now, everything I'm saying right now, I'm being like Donald Trump. This is all conspiracy on my part. But these are easy things to manipulate if you're a big player in the comic book industry. I personally think, with no evidence whatsoever, that it happens all the time. But it makes sense. If you look at, there's always a pattern to this. And I could go on and on, but my final beef related to this, because I could go on for a long time, is that I also have a beef with the variants. There's no accountability. I don't believe we actually know, despite what Comicron says. I have serious doubts that they actually know how many comic books are actually published. I find it very suspicious that Diamond is actually sitting on a bunch of issues in a warehouse somewhere. How much if Marvel can overproduce and overship and overpublish, and how do they know when it's a 1 in 50 variant? That doesn't mean anything to me. If I don't know, you tell me there's 80,000 issues of Batman and you're going to go 1 in 50 variant. Well, are there really 80,000? And if there's 1 in 50, sometimes I don't know about you, but I sometimes I see an awful lot of 1 in 50 variants out there, and they're going for 100, 200, 300. Something about it is just plain wrong. It rubs me the wrong way. It's suspicious. And I think I can't help but feeling that a lot of us are getting royally screwed over, and it bugs me. But I'll just leave it at that. But I just think that collectively, as much as I love this hobby, I do feel like a retard sometimes. And I'm part of that retard bubble. And I think at some point that retard bubble is going to burst.
Wow, there's so much to unpack with that. Okay, so guys, if you're not familiar, if you're not subscribed to Comic Boom, this is one of the reasons why you subscribe to them, because rants like that are happenstance. They happen all the time. All right, all the time, and it's intelligible. It's very intelligible. So yeah, there's that. Aside from that, I just did a spotlight and story where I'm talking about the first time that Tony Stark Iron Man meets the Mandarin. And Mandarin's like, "You're not prepared for my most powerful attack yet." Out of all 10 of these rings, the disintegrator and all this other stuff, his most powerful attack is his karate. He's the world's greatest karate master. And so as his iron is being broken, he's like, "Ow, ow, he's going to kill me soon." He suddenly pulls out his suit and opens up the back, and there's a slide rule calculator, because you got to think this is 1963 and 1964. Opens a slide rule calculator and calculates the trajectory of his next attack and exactly where he's got to block to hurt the Mandarin's hand, and that's how he beats the Mandarin. I'm like, dude, this is literally, that's what I'm envisioning as you're talking about these magic numbers that they're formulating, pulling out of their bungholes. Dude, this is hysterical.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the speculator market anyway, because it is literally just people who are driving up the price of these things so that they can benefit themselves, and it just is what it is. I feel like if local comic book stores can actually benefit off of the sales of these 1 in 50s or whatever, I'm actually all for it, because you can always get these artists' art later in an actual book, or go and meet the artist, or get a second print, anything like that. I don't know if they make too many second prints of variants, but you get the gist, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I hear you though. I 100% hear you.
Yeah, I just want to quickly add before you say your next one is that my comic book retailer, I love him to death, and but he has routinely, through all kinds of different ways, he doesn't order the obscene amount of comic books, and he ends up with 1 in 50 variants, 1 in 100 variants, and he orders 5 copies for the shelf. So how does he end up with them? He just smirks when he looks at me sometimes. Because he's part of a larger chain, he can get them, and it's just like, it helps the market, and I get it. I'm like you. He's my friend. I want this market to thrive, but something's not right something's not right in Denmark, gentlemen.
Something's rotten in Denmark, right?
Yeah, something's not right, and it's just, it's just not right. I'll just leave it at that.
I got you. All right. Well, my number 3 is not quite as intense, but the preamble in comic books. I said this plenty of times. John Byrne has said, if every single comic book that you make is someone's first comic book. And that's something that's true about pretty much everything. If you are making a comic book here, and I don't care if it's like freaking Demolition Man getting his own series, like who knows who that guy is, or if it's freaking Superman or Batman, God forbid, it's somebody's first comic book. So if you don't make the comic book in a way that people can actually jump on this comic book, read this comic book, at least have a halfway decent understanding of what's happening in the book and what happened prior to this, then you're just going to wind up finding a whole bunch of people who are getting a one shot of your comic book, and they're not buying part 2 or anything like that. I don't care if it's part 6 of a 6-issue arc. If I can't tell what happened in the previous issues, if not the previous arc, then you're going to get a whole bunch of people who are just not, and that includes longtime comic book readers who are just not going to keep on buying your comic book, which is the exact opposite of what you want. And realistically, the absolute hands down easiest way to do that, if you can't do it inside of your writing, which no blame, no shame, but if you can't do that in your writing, hey, maybe put the little preamble in the beginning where it's like, Spider-Man is, was bit by a radioactive spider when he was a kid and blah, 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 blah. And most recently, he just did. And now read the comic book. Dude, doesn't seem that hard to me.
I agree 100%. I do. And I have never known a situation. I've never read an article where a single person at any time, a comic book fan, I've never read anything from a comic book journalist, reviewer, or anyone who has ever complained about a preamble in a comic book, ever. I've never heard anyone complain about it except the comic book publisher. That's what bothers me.
And sometimes an editor. She doesn't need any more hate. And I love Heather Antos, but I remember Heather Antos actually put out a tweet this one time where she's like, has anybody ever not bought a comic book because there wasn't a, whatever she called it, a preamble, an introduction to a comic book? I didn't bother responding because it just didn't hurt me enough, but it's funny. It was not too long after I had a physical conversation with her at Fan Expo Canada up here in Toronto.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, when push comes to shove, how many people have, I don't know, whatever. Just you're probably not going to find people who are going to follow her who are interested in, replying, oh, no, not at all. Like, I'm talking about your average comic book person who's never bought a comic book before. Somebody who went and saw, I don't know, Black Panther in the movie theaters and says, okay, this was actually pretty good. You know what? I know there's a comic book store near me. Let me drive up there. You go in there. It's like, hey, what's the latest Black Panther comic book? Oh, it's issue number 23. Oh, cool. And you pick it up and you grab it. And there's no, I don't know if there is or isn't a preamble in it, but if there's no preamble, it's like, I don't know what's going on. He's up in space. What's happening? I have no idea what's going on. You don't bother going back there in a month or next week or ever. So those are the people who aren't going to respond to a tweet by a specific editor.
I'm going to go one step further and be and again because I'm ranting a bit. Let me suggest, with just a little bit of an overhanded or underhanded insult or overhanded insult, whatever, or maybe just a full to comic book writers in general. I personally believe, because as somebody who has written reviews for comic books, I think that if a comic book writer has to do a preamble, I think it improves their writing, because it reminds them of what came before and it forces them to articulate what came before in a concise fashion. And guess what? I challenge some writers to articulate what happened in your previous issue, because it's that badly written. And so I actually think it would help some of the writers if they had to articulate in a concise form. Tell me in one paragraph, because this is challenging as a writer sometimes. It's challenging as a writer. When I review Bendis' Legion of Superheroes, which I actually don't even mind that much, but when you have to review something and put it into words and when it's a complex story and you've got one or two paragraphs and you got to articulate that to someone and you got to put it in writing, that can be difficult. And I think preambles force the writer to do that. And if it's done masterfully, I've read preambles where I understand the previous issue better because I never understood the previous issue the way the preamble explained it. I've had that happen to me. And I consider myself an experienced reader. So I think it's necessary to re-educate the existing reader, not only new ones, especially in today's world.
That's actually something I found also, where a comic book will end and I'm just like, what happened? And then next month there is a preamble. I'm just like, oh,
exactly.
Okay, I get it. If there was a speech bubble there, or a thought bubble there, to go back to a point that you didn't want to get into. Yeah, at the end of the day, I've seen that too many times.
No, I hear you.
You're on number 3.
I'm on number 3. All right. Number 3 is something dear to my heart. And that is, and this is a pet peeve, and I say this with love. I say this with a deep, abiding love, followed by a rant. But YouTube journalists, YouTube comic book journalists, my brother, I'm gonna sing this for a while, and I know that you can tune in on this. But here's my pet peeve, and it happens all the time.
Is this a Final Crisis song?
Is
this a song, a quality like Final Crisis? Superman singing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't whistle that sharp like the Man of Steel, but
sing it, baby.
But yeah, my whistle won't destroy Darkseid, and it won't destroy YouTube journalists, but it will at least be heard. You know, how often is Bleeding Cool? And by the way, I love Bleeding Cool because I love gossip. Who doesn't love
Really? You do? I don't.
Well, you know what? I do. I admit it. I just love comic book gossip. I love it because it's speculation. I love ranting and raving. It's fun. But what I find odd is if I read a Bleeding Cool thing and it's gossip and it's 1 paragraph long, I don't, even if you're my friend and you have a YouTube channel, I don't want you to do a YouTube channel that says my thoughts on a one paragraph blurb on Bleeding Cool. Like, there's literally, I mean, especially during this pandemic, I don't know if you noticed, but there's been God love YouTube. I want more comic book people on YouTube. Fantastic. But there's been an explosion of people on YouTube during the pandemic. And, you know, but you can tell a lot of the newbies because they're talking about everything. I don't need to know what size of shirt you're wearing in the morning. I don't care what type of coffee you love at 9:45 on a Tuesday. And I don't care what your thoughts are on a blurb that I can read by going to Bleeding Cool or CBR, and there's actually no news unless you have actually something of substance to say. I'm just saying, maybe keep it to yourself till you have other stuff to say too. Like, don't just, wait till you have a collection of thoughts, and group them together and put them in one video, as opposed to having an individual video for every single thought that you have. That's just me. Maybe I'm different, but my time is, I'm a busy guy, and I like to, I judge people because that's who I am. I judge people. I like to think I judge people with compassion. I might love a particular YouTuber, but if all they're posting is a bunch of, commentary on news that why would I listen to you read? That's my personal pet peeve. People that will read the news, thank you. It's like, oh my God, I forgot how to read. I wish there was a YouTuber out there that could read this article for me. It's like, seriously? I mean, that is really bored. I've done videos when I'm bored too, but that's like really, really bored. Anyways, I'm sure I offended somebody like that out there, but I would much rather hear somebody rant, because I'm going to learn more about you when you bitch and complain than I will about listening to hear you read an article. Tell me what bothers you. Tell me what upsets you. Tell me what you're passionate about. But don't read verbatim what somebody else posted and expect that you're going to say something of substance and insightful. It's not going to happen. Or if you're going to do it, at least wear a mask. Do it nude. Do it naked. Upset the YouTube algorithm, but rock the boat. But don't just sit there and read off an article. It's just boring.
Yeah.
Anyways.
No, I'm 100%. We're two peas in the same pod on that one. Because look, I'm wrong. I'm going to tell you right now, everything I'm about to say, I'm 100% wrong. So are you, because they get lots and lots and lots of views. So apparently you and I are doing it all wrong, where it's like, I am not going to open my mouth unless I've got something intelligent to say. And instead, these guys are just like, I read an article and it said, bah, 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 bah. It's like, shut up, you're an idiot. You are literally an idiot. And yet there's apparently a billion blathering idiots out there who want to hear what you say. Ooh, read the article. Like, what are you doing? What are you honestly doing at this point? What has the world become? My God, man. Like, you can find this stuff on a tweet. People, dude, comic book resources. This is something, what you just said and what I'm about to say and more. I talk with Chillmonger about on my podcast, where every time he brings up something, there's a rumor such as, I always cut him off. It's like, we don't report on rumors here. because that's baloney. And we don't report on freaking tweets. All right. When Gail Simone will put out 1,000 tweets a day. All right.
Yeah.
And that's on a slow day. All right. Loves me some Gail Simone. And she's a very entertaining person. But Jesus Christ, I can freaking follow Gail Simone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't need somebody to sit there and make a freaking 6-paragraph news article on CBR who has clearly lost their effing minds over a tweet, which is how many characters? We're allowed to do twice as many characters now. What, 244, something like that? Like a 244 max character thing that probably also includes hashtags. And you're going to make a report on this tweet. And some people have responded with, "Are you kidding me?" This would be like if I made a video about somebody's article, about somebody's tweet, where I'm talking about what other people have said in the comments section. My God, the world is lost. We're all going to die. We all deserve the apocalypse. The climate is changing because this is Mother Earth saying, "F all you guys. I want you off my back." Dude, we deserve this. We deserve this. This is as bad to me. Look, if people like reaction videos, I'm all for having those reaction videos. You know what I hate the most about reaction videos? Those stupid thumbnails where somebody's got to be up there and be like, and do that stupid face like, what? You look so stupid.
You want to know how pissed off I got? Let me give you an example. Have you ever had this happen to you? And I already know the answer, but have you ever had the following experience? Oh my God, you just heard that you've been looking forward to this movie. It's coming out and the preview. Let me give you an example. My brother and I are huge Top Gun fans. Huge. Like we're like huge Top Gun fans and like we love it. And when I heard that the second Top Gun preview was out, it was like awesome. So I went immediately to YouTube to try to watch the video. Did you know it took me 10 times before I found the actual, because everyone and their dog it's the reaction video. It's like, why in the hell? I honestly think YouTube should put a moratorium that by the time I actually found the preview, I had to go through 9 idiots, showing their faces. I was like, why are you saying Top Gun preview on your YouTube title to your video and you're not showing the video, but you're going to tell me about it? Like I want to watch some idiot tell me about the Tom Cruise movie that's coming out. It just came out today. And then, like you said, and half these guys got more views than the goddamn movie preview. Like,
that kills me.
What the hell? I don't get it.
I get it. There's people who want to know what somebody thinks about something because, like, oh, this person thinks similar to I do. You know what I'm saying? This person's very entertaining. I would love to see this person's reaction to such and such video, such and such trailer that just got released. Hey, sure, that's cool, man. That's cool. Again, with me, I'm all about the freaking thumbnail. Is like, what are you doing with the thumbnail? You know, say I'm cool with listening to people's stuff. Hey, like honestly, hey, I'm down with Top Gun too, man. Every time I go to the beach, I just look around like, where's the shirtless guys playing volleyball? This isn't a real beach. Drive on to the next one, baby. You know, sound like Jay-Z, on to the next one. But I mean, like, if like case in point, if you were gonna do a trailer reaction video to the Black Widow final trailer, if that hasn't been released yet, I'd be interested in what you've got to say. You know what I'm saying? Well, actually, if it was more of a DC one, especially, you know what I'm saying? Because like you are just balls deep into freaking DC. Forget about it. I would love to hear you say something like, well, the costume, that's actually representative of such and such and such. And that came with the history of so if they're going to do that, and it's like, see you put in the lines, it's like, I wonder if this movie is going to live up to this guy's expectations because mine have skyrocketed right now. That's what I'm talking about. I'm cool with that. But hey, the community. We're talking a lot about the community. My number 5 is going to be about the community.
Yeah. Well, it's just a rant because we're all part of it. And like I said, I'm a hypocrite because I'm and inevitably I'm going to do a video probably like that at some point too. I mean, possibly. I'm just saying, I think it's healthy to have these types of rants every now and then. So I at least want to acknowledge that I'm self-aware of my hypocrisy and that I can't be the only one that notices this nonsense because it's nonsense and we're all part of it and we all seem to contribute to it. And it's all fun. We're a community, we get along, we love each other, et cetera, and we yell at each other from time to time. But, it is comical and we have to laugh at ourselves sometimes because it's just insane.
Yeah. Okay, so
what's your next one?
Like I said, my number 5 is going to be about the community. My number 4, however, legacy numbering. I'm mad that I even got to call it legacy numbering. Dude, what the frick? You remember when we used to be on like Superman number 646, you know what I'm saying, and so on and so forth, and well, not Superman, but Action Comics, you know what I'm saying? Remember when we, like certain comic books, especially, you'd always have like up until the mid to mid late 90s, all the comic books had just one numbering. Unless all of a sudden they would be like, we're going to end this run of Superman, and we're going to bring up the Man of Steel because, you know, reasons. Hey, I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it. But you don't just like if I'm on Avengers number something, and all of a sudden it's number 1 now, and then we start going, we get to like 25 issues, and all of a sudden it's number 1 again, and then suddenly it goes up to legacy numbering, and now it's back down to number 1. What in the holy hell are you doing at this point? Like, dude, it's a stupid gimmick to try and get people going. And this really just falls back onto all the other things that I'd said. This goes back to my number 3, my number 2, and my number 1. If you do those first 3 things, you will never have to renumber a comic book because it's a gimmick. Because how many times, dude, there's a video that I did when I first started doing comic book reviews for the Fool Killer. Okay, Fool Killer issue number 1. It was a comic book review. I get people jumping in there talking about, oh man, you don't know anything about Fool Killer. Actually, I do know a couple of things about Fool Killer, but I don't know the detailed freaking rectal. What is it called when you get a rectal exam? He was like, I've never done that. You know,
the rectal exam.
I know 2 different versions of the Fool Killer before this one. I didn't realize that there were 3,000 or whatever the hell there is. When somebody gets something, hey, maybe you should Google the character before. No, why are you pointing a finger at me? A booger-laden finger, a dried, crusty booger when you're doing this, and then hey, maybe you should read Fool Killer. Maybe you should go and Google and learn who the character is. No. Stop the victim blaming because I bought a comic book, and it's the freaking responsibility of the goddamn comic book writers in order to let me know more about the character. Yeah. Let me know where I can find more stuff about the character. I'm supposed to be able to look and see everything that I need to know about a character when I first pick up a comic book, especially if it's a freaking number 1. Especially if it's a freaking number 1, for crying out loud.
You know,
so, no, I don't want to hear it.
I have a theory. As to what caused the problem. And this is I'm just speculating, but I think that the reason why legacy numbering became an issue is because when movies started to have sequels, that's when people became more stupid. Because, for example, like I love my parents to death, but I could never convince my mom to watch, for example, Star Wars: A New Hope. If I told my mom, do you want to watch a science fiction movie called Star Wars back in the day, she'd say it. She'd watch it with me. But if I told her it was Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, she said, well, no, I can't do it. I haven't seen the first 3. It wouldn't occur to her that, because in her mind, well, it's Episode 4. Why? I mean, what kind of an idiot starts reading a book in Volume 4? I mean, that's just, and you can understand their logic, right? But I think that's what happens when movies started to have sequels, and then people didn't go to all the movies. I think it maybe threw a wrench into the mindset and into the into the social zeitgeist, mentality that somehow that if you're not at number 1, you don't have the whole story. And I think that poisoned the well of the comic book industry, and that I think it maybe people figured, or the publishers figured that, well, we're going to lose the readers, man. They're not going to pick up issue 647 of Adventure Cut. There's no way, man. 647. I mean, I can't remember what number 1 was. I wasn't even alive when number 1 came out. How can we tell a story that starts at issue 750? I think it's, we live in a world where everybody wants to treat everybody like they're idiots. And everybody, not only do we live in and I don't want to get political here, but we live in a culture that wants everybody to be happy and is sensitive to everybody. Mm-hmm. And that causes some controversy. And I think that we live in an era of microaggressions and ultra sensitivities and safe spots and everything else. And whether you agree with that or not, I think at a minimum, I think that there's an awful lot of people out there that not only assume that people are sensitive, but they assume that they're stupid too. And that's part of the problem. I think it's all endemic. I think it forms one part of one large cultural assumption that is wrong. And I think that the comic book publishing companies, rather than embrace that nonsense, they should just assume that we're intelligent people and just focus on good storytelling and leave the goddamn numbering alone.
The numbering, a lot of it, like I said, is a gimmick though, because more people are willing to buy an issue number one.
Yeah.
Again, when you don't treat the comic book like it's a number one, I just don't see the purpose of it. That is interesting though, the sequel thing. So I think you got a number 4 also, don't you?
Oh yes. This one is this is a minor little gripe, but it I can't believe I even have to say this, but I guess I have to. And anyways, I have a problem with interspecies romance. I can't believe I actually have to say this, but you know, because there are actually people out there that actually wanted Charlton Heston to screw the ape on Planet of the Apes. But you know, because so there are really twisted and sick people out there. Now we live in a culture right now. Let's face it, there are people out there that don't think that's a big deal, but yet, you know, I guess I got to point out to some people that it is in fact illegal to screw an animal. This might be shocking to some viewers.
Bestiality is illegal for good reasons.
But case in point, the Justice League Justice League Apocalypse War animated movie that came out. It ends the Justice League, the latest crop of the DC animated series. Constantine, spoiler alert, and serious spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, because there's a little at the beginning of the movie. Constantine talks about having an ex, and you assume it's an ex-girlfriend or maybe an ex-boyfriend. You're thinking because he's a bisexual character, and he talks about an ex that he has on the Suicide Squad. And in the movie, in the animated movie, you're assuming throughout the movie that it's Harley Quinn. And the reason why you're assuming it's Harley Quinn is that it's really the only possibility, because the only other possibility is King Shark. Well, it ends up being King Shark. Now this is intended to be, apparently this was intended to be funny. Now I should read some of the quotes here from the director when they were making this. This was the logic, because this is so funny. It's supposed to intended to be funny.
I'm laughing.
Well, I mean, I'm sure I'm laughing, and I guess there's a part of me, and maybe it's the old school redneck part of me, the maybe politically incorrect part of me, but there used to be a time when it wouldn't even occur to me to think that was funny to want to put in the movie. And what they were saying is, and I don't even want to mention her name, because I don't want to like pick on anybody. I got it here, but I'll just summarize it because it's quicker. Basically, the idea was that if they were going to elaborate on it, it was because Constantine is a magical character. John Constantine is a character that has some of his powers grounded in the magical realm, et cetera, and that when he first met King Shark, King Shark can't communicate in English very well. He's got his own language. But John Constantine, because he's a magical person, he bonded with King Shark. He could communicate with him. So naturally, if you come across a humanoid-looking shark, naturally you're going to bond with him and probably end up having sex with it. Apparently, according to the logic of this is what bothers me. Like, I don't think that was a good idea. I just don't think that was a good idea. I have a problem with that. And I think that if you're going to, and I have a problem with that in comic books in general, where people complain in our world where people will, I mean, it's one thing to have issues with, transgenders and everything, like actual human beings that deserve respect. But I don't know, like, am I wrong to think that if we're talking about, I mean, if suddenly, Professor Bill, let me ask you, if your cat suddenly suddenly could walk on 2 legs and your wife left you, would it ever occur to you, even in your most drunk?
Can I just stop you right there? No.
Of course not.
No, that is freaky.
This is what I mean. And so, we laugh at it. We laugh at it in the cartoons, and it's kind of funny, but I'm surprised that they go there. It's not like a Klingon or a Romulan or a Vulcan that look humanoid enough that you can, it's like, oh, I'd do that. I'd do that.
I was gonna say, because like, wouldn't you get with a Twi'lek? I would.
That's what I was like. The commercial. Anyways, that's just a rant. It's just kind of what a good for a laugh, but
Yeah, there's a certain level of like, oh, interspecies stuff, and so it's like it's a little. It's weird because it does kind of make me think about bestiality in that regard. Long before you even said it, as soon as you started saying it, was like, yeah, because like we're not okay with bestiality for pretty good reason, and now this, like, I don't know, like we look at it genetically, like would the parts even match up? I mean, could you actually have offspring off of that? I don't get it. I really just don't get it. I don't
yeah,
know.
it's just whatever. It's a rant. Maybe I'm a hypocrite. Maybe 300 years from now, when the humanoids, when the human race is merged with the shark population, they'll look back at me and think of me as an interspecial racist or something.
Absolutely, you're so behind, like you're archaic, Stone Age, unbelievable. But I am saying, I'm still keeping my eyes open for a good Twi'lek. I'm saying. What do you go? Hey, isn't King Shark telepathic though?
Yeah, I actually think I actually think he is.
But just not in English.
That's right.
What do sharks say if they don't speak English? What do sharks say? Num num.
But let me put it to you this way: does it really matter if he's telepathic? Would you fall in love with him? Are you more inclined to fall in love with a shark if you know it's telepathic? If a telepathic shark came up to you and planted a thought in your head and said, "Hey, how you doing?" Would it have an impact on you?
I don't know. That'd be one heck of a hot shark. Is it a hammerhead or is it like, a nurse shark? I mean, it's a little freaking weird, man. Anyway.
Yeah, hammerhead puts a whole new meaning to the phrase "just the tip."
Yeah, it's what you lose if goes down and it's got all those teeth. Like, dude, what the frick is going on? Anyway, this has really devolved a lot. I'm going to get into my number 5. So,
okay, number 5.
I am going to talk about the community in general. And this is, obviously not everybody. I'm talking about individuals, just whatever. I'm big on don't get into groupthink. And if there was ever a group that was about don't get into groupthink, I wouldn't even get with that group. You know what I'm saying? Just in general. I like to think a thought all the way to its logical conclusion. I love critical analysis of things. I love just enjoying things. I love lots of things. And, if I don't like something, I'd rather just get together with an idea on my own and just say, I'm not really too fond of this. I'm cool with talking with people about it. I'm cool about making a video about my likes and my dislikes, my tastes and my distastes. At the same time, then you got groups of people getting together and you got cancel culture, you got Comicsgate. And like, to me, those are the two real distant factors that never the twain shall meet, unless all of a sudden we come across something like freaking Safe Space and what's the other one? Snowflake. What in the hell? You literally had to get a Daniel Kibblesmith to come along. Look, there are problems in the comic book community. I think that we each just went over 4, each, you know what I'm saying? And when it comes down to it, there are a lot of problems in the comic book world. All right. And none of those things are going to be fixed. We're not going to be able to get rid of somebody like a freaking Daniel Kibblesmith, who, in my personal humble opinion, doesn't belong in the freaking comic books world. All right. That's just me. And you know what? I'm not here to take food out of anybody's mouth, even if he is a millionaire, or excuse me, a billionaire. He's got like, no, a billionaire? No, he's a millionaire. He's a millionaire. He's worth like $5 million or something like that. Anyway, just, you know what? If that's what he wants to do, fine. But just letting him into the mainstream community because he happens to be the guy who writes for Steve Colbert, when Steve Colbert is less funny now than he's ever been. I'm sorry. I just don't think that that's a resume for coming into the comic book world. But if it is, hey, I'm simply going to show it by not buying your comic books. Oh, I'm buying that Snowflake Safe Space one because I need a good laugh. I need to know what the hell's going on with that. But you make it an issue number 2, we got an issue. We got a problem. You know what I'm saying? I am not interested in this nonsense. But the community itself, when they come together in this big group think and they start to get real territorial, cancel culture as a thing. It's a culture in and of itself. Comicsgate is also a culture where you just got two groups of extremely toxic SOBs, both pointing the finger at each other like Spider-Man at the end of the Spider-Verse, which was back from the whatever year that original Spider-Man cartoon came out.
Yeah.
You're the toxic one. You're the toxic one. You're the toxic one. You're the toxic one. Like, dude, are you kidding me right now? They're both extreme, like seething with toxicity.
Yeah.
And I'm stuck in the middle going, can I just read the comic books that I want to read and boycott the ones that I'm not interested in? Because this doesn't make sense, but that's just me.
I totally agree with you. And I have to, the one thing that bothers me whenever I address anything like this, and I'm just going to be very blunt about it, is I have friends that, and I've done live streams, and I've got YouTube friends, people that I know well and I respect, that are on both sides and on the extremities and everywhere in between on the Comicsgate versus SJW spectrum. And I don't generally engage with, and they know this, and they've, and I respect them. And when I talk to them privately with direct message, or when I engage with them, it's often, it can be like this, you and I just having fun, and they have fun too. And I don't know what it is, but it's, I think that we're all like this to a certain extent, but I think that it's almost like when it reminds me a little bit like when I was dating. I put a little bit, but I'm 51 years old, I'm married now, but back in the day, you always put a little bit of a facade on when you're dating, and you want to put on a little bit of a show, and you got to you get caught up in a certain way of thinking, in a certain facade you got to play. And that's what I think happens. And I think it's really regretful. And I think that they don't serve themselves, and I put it that way. And I'm because I like these people personally. And I think that they portray a side of themselves that is not an accurate portrayal of who they are. And I often end up in some diplomatic way or another suggesting to them that what they're doing isn't serving them.
It's actually making themselves into a meme.
Well, it is, and the thing is, and it bothers me only because the people that I know and the people that when they talk to me, they're not those people, and that's what bothers me, and it really bothers me as well. And again, this is I've been ranting and raving, and now I'm getting a little bit more serious here, but I do think it's had an impact on my YouTube channel. I think we get tied up in algorithms. I think I've been block botted by some of my favorite writers on Twitter that I had nothing to do with. I've just been block botted. And I know it's because if I've been block botted, it's because of I happen to be friends with somebody who said something stupid.
I actually wasn't following you.
And it really bothers me. And it is what it is. I mean, we got to be careful. I can't point fingers here because I may have gotten somebody blocked. Who knows, right? I mean, look, I've tweeted some dumb things in my life too. Good. I'm not gonna say I haven't. All right. I'm just saying. I agree with you that like what we're doing right now, having a good laugh, being able to laugh at ourselves and point out our own. Like I said, I admit I love being a hypocrite sometimes because I enjoy it. I'm drinking, I'm having fun. And we live in hypocrisy sometimes. That's part of the enjoyment of life. There's the greatest parts of life are paradoxes. Sometimes you have the most fun by doing nothing. Sometimes by doing, it's a paradox. And you don't have to explain it. You don't have to justify it. But I don't understand perpetuating something that doesn't serve either side. And particularly the SJW versus Comicsgate is such nonsense. And you'll see right now on YouTube, by the way, everybody's distancing themselves. Everybody's fighting to define the narrative. Everybody wants to be able to define what it is. As long as I get to define what Comicsgate means, as long as I get to define what SJW means, that's Hitler. No, it's Superman. SJW. Superman was SJW. So was Hitler. Well, okay. Whoever defines SJW first wins the debate. So you get back. It's like, and then everyone is an expert on history. Oh well, did you know back in World War I and World War II, that's the development of fascism. And guess what they used to call fascists? SJWs. It's like, okay, all right. And guess what they used to call Superman? A social justice warrior. Oh my God, is Superman a fascist? Oh my God. I got to stop collecting comics now because my entire life meaning has been completely uprooted and destroyed. Or maybe I can just shut Twitter off and read a comic book and relax. You know, it's sometimes it gets a little bit much.
Yeah. Like I've admitted to you before, I stopped following you for a while on Twitter just because, and you were following me the whole time though, just because I was afraid of getting block botted by somebody who was going to block you. And then at one point I was just like, you know what, Boom is cool as hell. So I was like, you know what, if somebody's going to freaking block me for it, whatever. Then I probably don't want to follow them in the first place. So followed you again. That was like a last year thing, but just for the sake of conversation. And yeah, when push comes to shove, I think that the community in and of itself has gotten so much of, well, I dare you to cross this line. Well, this is where I'm planting my flag. It's gotten so ridiculous. And at the end of the day, the more toxic that everybody gets in yelling at each other, the less reason that any of these comic book creators have to actually change what they're going to do. Because I'll tell you straight up right now, if I go walking outside and somebody yells at me about any little thing, hey, I'm the type of person who I will take it to heart in my mind later on. I'll try and determine, hey, is this a valid criticism? Blah, 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 blah. But most people won't. And on the spot, even me, as reasonable as I can be, I'm more likely to be like, I think you should walk away.
Yeah.
Because it's a personal safety issue right now for you. Walk away. Don't come up and start yelling in my face. Don't start acting like a tough. I will never listen. You're standing on the edge of that cliff and you're about to fall off and you're on top of a ladder looking down the edge of a cliff. What are you doing? I'm more likely to turn around and be like, walk away, as opposed to get down. And that's an extremist, mentality. And I'm joking, of course. I'm being silly about it. But yeah, nobody changes their mind on the spot because you're yelling at them or because you're calling them mother effers or whatever other name, a Nazi or an SJW or whatever. Nobody changes. So this is one of the main reasons why the community bothers me so much. I can sit back and just laugh about it all, be like, you suck and you suck. And the guys on this side will say, well, you're on that side. And the guys on that side be like, well, you're on that side. I'm like, yeah, sure. And a vote for not voting for Biden is a vote for Trump, and not voting for Trump is a vote for Biden. No, how about I don't vote for anybody and it's a vote for each other? And this way, what's the point? Because who cares? Because everybody's an idiot. When you're so caught up in groupthink, you are an idiot. And I don't care who's out there and going, I'm offended. You're offended because you're an idiot. At the end of the day, I'm so tired of the groupthink and the constant toxicity, because meanwhile, it gives every single reason for these comic book creators who have actual issues that they need to fix. Mm-hmm. And voices like ours aren't going to reach them because they're too busy here. As soon as they hear, I really don't like that you don't do such and such, like, oh, you're no different than these guys. Yeah. I am actually different than those guys. We just happen to have a similar view. I also agree with these guys on something. It's a weird thing, man.
Well, and it's something that, I do think about, but at the end of the day, it is something that I don't like admitting this, but the truth is I have thought a disproportionate amount about who my Twitter friends were and who I was following on YouTube. And I'm ashamed to admit that, because why the hell should I be ashamed? I want to follow somebody. I want to follow them. I don't care what if I follow them, there's something I like about them. I don't care what their political views are. If I like the way they do a comic book review, if I like their humor, and especially if they have a different view than mine, I might want to hear it, to be blunt. And so I have a choice. I can either be, do I sacrifice what I want to listen to? It used to be that I could listen to any comedian I wanted and not be judged for it. Now we live in a day and age where I can't listen to even a hard-ass comedian because in case he says something that offends somebody. And I don't want to get off on a tangent. And I'm looking. I realize I can see myself. I'm looking at unreasonably angry, right? But I can get that way about it because it bothers me. It really, really bothers me that. And so I follow who I want to follow on Twitter. I follow of all different stripes, and same with YouTube. And it is what it is, and a lot of it I'm very much against. I have no problem sharing that I think Trump is a piece of human garbage. I don't advertise that too much on Twitter, I'll happily retweet it. I laugh at people that support him because I laugh at them privately. I would never debate them because I'd humiliate them, because I've actually read the Mueller report, all of it, all the footnotes, all of it. I have an arrogance and a conceit about what I know. I don't betray all of that. I'd rather just joke about it and rant and rave and, just sort of nod my head. But at the end of the day, I mean, if I'm a firm believer that if you really know your subject matter, it sort of reminds me what was that one superhero where, oh yeah, that's what it was, Midnighter. Midnighter, he can tell you if there's that one superhero where, or it was like Spider-Man, I think it was, he could sense what his opponent was going to do so quickly that it looked like he was being a coward in the fight, because he knew what his opponent was going to do in advance. It always looked like he was almost being a coward in fighting him, because he knew what his opponent was going to do, because he's like 12 steps ahead.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I feel like I am on Twitter. Boy, I know I'm sounding egotistical here, but it's not worth it. You can't in 140 characters have a constructive debate. Certainly not on politics.
Yeah.
There's no way you can have a constructive debate on politics with 140 characters. And there's no way you can do it without insulting the person. Like if you happen to be a Trump supporter, which I know you're not, and I happen to be on the opposite side, there's no way that we can have a constructive debate with 140 characters back and forth. At some point, I'm going to misarticulate something that you're going to take offense to, and vice versa. It's just not possible.
Plus, there's no intonation. There's no, inflection of your tone. You can't tell when somebody's being sarcastic, anything like that. I'm not a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form. I've despised Trump since I was 12 years old. I'm 44 now, almost 45. But I'm from New York, New Jersey area. I've known this joker for the longest time, but I've also known Biden for a long time. And there's people who would turn that off right away, be like, you're what do they call it? The Trump derangement syndrome? No, it's not. The people who have Trump derangement syndrome are people who are the never Trumpers, and the people who are like only Trumpers. They both have Trump derangement syndrome. Guess what? Nobody says it about Biden, and I can't stand Biden. And there are people who have Biden derangement syndrome also out there.
Yeah.
Tara Reade has problems with. Tara Reade is at least 3 times more consistent and has more evidence to back up what she said than Christine Blasey Ford. Yet, Alyssa Milano could be like, screw Kavanaugh, but Biden's cool.
I actually feel, because a lot of my YouTube friends, and some of them I know are Trump supporters, and I say this with respect. I mean, the most kind thing I can say about my American friends is that I feel for them, because they don't have much of a choice. They got a guy who has borderline dementia versus a guy who just really doesn't do anything. He just wants to keep the government away from everything, and that's
can't do anything unless he's on Sudafed. Yeah, well, I know.
I mean, it is what it is. Like, and so I guess it is what it is. And as a Canadian, I mean, look, we don't want to get into politics here, but
anymore.
At the very least, I don't. My friends aren't big on Prime Minister Trudeau, but on Justin Trudeau. I at least I've never thought of Justin Trudeau as somebody who didn't have the cognitive capacity to be Prime Minister. I at least respect his intelligence, and I at least respect the fact that he tries to put lipstick on the pig, so to speak. He makes some token attempt to acknowledge the fact that he's speaking to intelligent people, and he at least realized. I think he tries too hard not to offend us. He's the total opposite of Trump, but at least he has some acknowledgement that he's in a leadership position, that he should at least try.
He does cast his pearls before swine. I'll give him that. We're going to get biblical.
Yeah.
So what's your number 5?
All right, my number 5. Okay. My number 5 is, and we're going to go back, going to have some more fun here. Get away from the politics, and let's talk about something that all of us know so much about, and that's time travel. Because as we all know, Trump never won the 2016 election. That was all nonsense because I went back in time and I changed all that. So we're all happy now. There's no pandemic. The Wuhan virus, the Chinese virus. I'm sorry, COVID-19. It never happened. Don't worry about it. It's all a dream. It's all a bad dream.
But our mothers still have to die. That's a fixed point in time.
But my pet peeve, and I have mixed feelings about. This is a little bit of a pick on Joshua Williamson, but it's not Joshua Williamson's fault. He's certainly not the only person who I think is guilty of this. I do think Jeff Johns is in many ways he originated this nonsense, and I actually.
You're saying through the Booster Gold series, right?
Well, that too, Jeff Johns, the whole notion of time travel. I think it's very important that you have that if you're going to establish a universe, you got to know what the rules are. And if you're too fast and loose with time travel, you create problems. And this goes back to your earlier point, your earlier gripe about continuity, right? And time travel, if you're going to have time travel in a universe that respects continuity, you got to be careful if you play fast and loose with time travel and the rules. And I give a high compliment to Avengers Endgame. I mean, I'm so impressed with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They did, as Dan Didio said something about the Marvel Cinematic Universe that I think is so true. Back when he was editor-in-chief of DC, he said the Marvel Cinematic Universe did comic books better than comic books do comic books. And he meant by that is that they had imagine those 23 Marvel movies to be comic books. That would be a beautifully coherent story. It flows together so well, those movies. It's beautifully done. It's absolutely masterful. And specifically with respect to time travel, the way they played that in Avengers Endgame with Ant-Man saying, "You mean it's not like Back to the Future?" And they had a very specific discussion explaining, well, no, if you go back in time and you stop, well, I'm going to use my own example, but if you go back in time and stop yourself from being born, you still exist. You just created a new timeline where you weren't born, but you still exist. Your timeline still exists.
That's actually the way that the Marvel Universe handles time in the comic books also.
Yeah, well, and that's beautiful. There's consistency there. And what I don't like about the DC Universe, clearly, and this has been doubled down with Joshua Williamson, is that it's not the case. And this started with, I guess that's always been the case. They play fast and loose with it, but particularly with the Flashpoint paradox. And what a lot of people may not appreciate is that the Flashpoint, that's when Barry Allen went back in time, saved his mother's life from being killed by Professor Zoom, or Uber Dawn, whatever. And that created the Flashpoint paradox, which eventually had to be undone, and he had to let Reverse Flash kill his mom to undo it. And unfortunately, what that did is that that led to the New 52, although that wasn't Jeff Johns' intention at the time when he wrote it. That was not his intention, but that's what happened. Then all of a sudden, we have this rule where there used to be a rule where time travel was said to be impossible, but now with the Flash, because Joshua Williamson's run out of ideas, the Flash is always changing time. He's always going back. And he's playing fast and loose with it. Now he's creating paradoxes. He's going back in Paradox. The villain is killing different past versions of Barry Allen, going back and an infinite number of times, it looks like, and gaining it. Anyways, it's just muttering the waters, and it's really bothersome to me, and it really takes away from a storyline. If you're going to, so my pet peeve in a nutshell is time travel has to be done right, and you have to set the rules up front, and you have to stick to them. You have to stick to them, because if you don't stick to them, then all the character gravitas loses its value. For example, Joshua Williamson has stated that we're going to have another 2 story arcs leading into the finish line. The final arc of his Flash run is called Finish Line, and he hints, for example, that there's going to be a tragedy, hinting at a character's death. I don't know what character is going to die, but my point is this: since you haven't really set the rules for time travel, is there any gravitas to the character's death? Really? That's my problem. Is that when you don't establish the setting correctly, you impair the character development, and you impair the impact that story has on the reader. And that's my pet peeve.
You think it's going to be Wallace West?
Well, honestly, I really don't know. I like Wallace West. I do
That's
think
why they
he's a
have to kill him.
redundancy. I do think he's a redundancy, but in fairness, uh, and I hate to play up. I hate to get into the comic book politics of it, but I think they probably want to keep him because he's a minority character. So I don't think it's going to be Wallace West for that reason. I really don't. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be. I think it's going to be maybe. If not Jay Garrick, it's going to be another one of the. It can. There's a whole slew of other Flash characters that are. There's the Tornado Twins that they could kill off, which are Barry Allen's kids from the original Crisis storyline. There's oh my God.
What if they
Right?
killed off Godspeed?
Yeah, Godspeed. They could kill off Godspeed, but Joshua Williamson won't do that because he gets a cut every time Godspeed's mentioned. I mean, he created him, so I'm sure he gets some sort of. He's not going to kill off a character that he created.
Do you think that they really get a cut? I don't think they get a cut of anything.
Well, you might be right. I assume that they did only because I assume that's part of the. Actually, that was going to be one of my pet peeves. But maybe you can correct me on that. But I understand that. Well, Bendis is creating all these new characters. Is he doing it because of his ego? No, he's doing it not just from his ego, but for his paycheck. Every time they're referenced in the future, he gets a little bit here, a little bit there. I mean, they don't own the characters, but my understanding is, at least, I remember Jim Shooter. Even he gave some protection to a lot of the characters that were created. And I thought
he was the last person to do that.
Yeah, my understanding is that there's still some of those contractual things that are existing for creators now in DC at Marvel. The percentages are much lower, but I think they still get some. I call them residuals, but that's for the TV stuff. I don't know what they call it in comic books, but like, for example, Scott Snyder. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit of a pet peeve that he's creating all these new characters for death metal. I mean, I'm looking forward to it, but he's also doing it because 5-6 years down the road. I mean, the Batman Who Laughs. I'm sure he's getting a cut every time. Why do you think he keeps going back to that little parcel, that little pearl?
I know that when they go to TV or movies, they do get something. There has to be, like, it's the law that you actually have to give something to them. Tony Isabella, one of his big complaints was when Hanna-Barbera was doing the Super Friends, Super whatever, that one where they had like Black Vulcan, I think he was called, and the Apache Chief and Tornado and all this stuff. They were supposed to be like the guy with, who was it? Apache? No, Apache Chief was the one who grew. But whatever, the Vulcan character was actually supposed to be Black Lightning, which was his creation, and he was supposed to get a small cut of that. It wasn't even like something that was going to make him rich, but he was supposed to get something, and they didn't want to do that. So they said, well, just make Black Vulcan instead.
Yeah.
And like the other guy was supposed to be Red Tornado, so they did the samurai guy instead. And it's like, you cheap bastards.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Likewise, a lot of these guys are said, like Steve Ditko, according to a neighbor, actually got about $1 million sent to $1 or $2 million, whatever, because of Spider-Man. What he'd done with Spider-Man. It's like they get money for that. I know they do because that's the union rules for the Writers Guild. Jeff Johns is going to, of course, have his Stargirl character there. And then it's Stargirl, right?
Yeah. He created Stargirl. He created.
That's her name, right? Okay, yeah. I just wanted to make sure that was her name. Also, Red Death is supposed to be one of the guys, his Flash character that was actually Batman. Well, Bruce Wayne, at least. That's coming.
Isn't that Scott Snyder's character, the Red Death?
Oh yeah, Scott Snyder. Sorry, because I was getting into the death metal thing.
Right.
So yeah, all this. I know that's when it goes to movies. That hey, there's a good chance that could actually happen. I think Charles Soule got something for Flint, one of his Inhuman characters, becoming a main, well, for a season at least on the Agents of Shield. But as far as the comic books, I don't think they get anything. There isn't enough money to go around, or in their opinion, there isn't enough money to go around for that. But if it does go to mainstream, then yeah, absolutely they do. I don't know. It gives the opportunity for them to make a good character. Now, if you're going to be like Bendis and you're just going to start doing a crapshoot, hey, when I was an engineer, we used to have several testing methods. One was called the shotgun method, where you literally just erase or take everything off the board, put something new for everything, and then you say, oh, it works now. So one of those things was bad.
Yeah.
It's a very expensive way to do it, but it's a way to do it. Or you just start slowly changing everything, as opposed to doing the tests to see what exactly is the problem here on this amplifier board, with this bias board, whatever. Instead, just change everything, or just start changing things one at a time because you don't feel like testing everything. Hey, there's lots of ways to do it.
Well, I mean, you use Bendis as an example. I just think now Bendis had his own contract. You never know what his contract says for his new characters. But
That is true.
you look at the slew of new characters he created for Superman. Melanie Moore, Trish X, Invisible Mafia, the Red Mist, Leviathan. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, I would be surprised if he wasn't getting at least a little bit of a, like, I don't know what formula they use, but I would be surprised if he didn't. But I mean, I guess we don't know. I mean, it just seems to me now in this era of creators' rights and what have you, I would think that maybe there'd be something, but then maybe not, because there's also a huge push, because look at the huge success. I think now with the success of the Kickstarter, with you look at all the Kickstarter, the success of Gordon Murphy's plot lines or plot hole, his Kickstarter campaign there, and the success of Jimmy Palmiotti's Pop Kill. I love that, and his Painkiller Jane. Him and Amanda Connor did that. I mean, there's a lot of success by these mainstream. Frank Cho doing the cover for Red Sonja for issue 13. That's selling quite well on I believe it's Indiegogo. They're making a lot of money.
Variant cover and somehow making money. It's the weirdest thing. It's a variant cover, and yet it's making money on this Kickstarter thing.
Yeah,
this crowdfunding. What?
I don't hear you, but I think that's sort of like I think that as that becomes more popular, because I can see myself doing that. Even Jim Starlin on Dreadstar. I love Dreadstar. I got all the Dreadstar issues, man. And that
is him. That is him.
I know, and so I'm looking forward to that. And I'm so looking forward to that. But I think that's going to become more, as that becomes more and more popular. And this is a digression, but I think that we're going to see DC and Marvel, maybe if they haven't got those contractual incentives for new characters that we're talking about. If you're right about that, I see DC and Marvel changing their tune, because as they make a name for themselves with the big two, why stay with the big two when you can go and do your own indie campaign and in less than a month have $200,000-$300,000 in backers? Come on.
Yeah. Mentioning this, I wonder if maybe one of the reasons why Bendis doesn't, or one of the reasons why he does continue making a bunch of new characters, is that at the end of the day, he has the capability of now making it so that you always have to say special thanks to Brian Michael Bendis for such and such and such, for the, appears because of Brian Michael Bendis. He wants to have his name in there like Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Plus, if somebody else does a better job with like Red Cloud or whatever, then all of a sudden that movie gets made. Oh, it's based on stuff that he created, but it was because of my idea. I created this stuff. Yeah, he had this really cool storyline that they're using, but it's my character, so yeah. I hear what you're saying. I think it's really just the ego more than anything else with this guy.
Yeah, but no, it is what it is. But we went on a sidetrack there. I was talking about my pet peeve was the time travel, and that's just my pet peeve is that when you establish something that actually forms the environment upon which your narrative is taking place, i.e., a new time setting created by a time travel. You have to get the rules in place because, and I love this word because it's one of the few words I can actually pronounce correctly, verisimilitude. I practice that a lot. I look in the mirror in the morning and I say verisimilitude, verisimilitude, verisimilitude.
Uh-huh.
I mean, stories need verisimilitude. And I find, especially with time travel stories that are badly written, they lack verisimilitude because you haven't correctly established the rules. If you violate the rules that you've created for your own story, it lacks verisimilitude. It's not believable within the narrative upon which it's taking place. It's that simple. And that's what I think is wrong with Joshua Williamson's The Flash.
Yeah, it's The Flash does do time travel a lot, but it's not a time travel comic book like Booster Gold was. Back in the day. It's The Flash, and he can't just keep going back in time and doing stuff because it just gets too choppy. It gets too weird. Somebody shows up. I don't know which version of it is, especially now. I actually stopped reading The Flash as of the most recent issue. I just didn't have the heart to get back into it, and that was after 2 months of not reading, the bi-week or the bi-monthly Flash comic book.
Yeah,
Bi-weekly,
yeah.
bi-weekly,
I,
bi-monthly.
I just want to say, I just want to give some props to Joshua Williamson because I've been very hard on him on the Flash. I really like his Birthright. Honestly, I think it's a different writer writing Birthright. I love it. It's sort of like the Conan Barbarian, a young boy trapped in a far off land, and then he comes back to the modern day, and he's older, and he's the Conan Barbarian type, and he's reunited with, and it's like 40. It's on issue 42. It's wrapping up. It's really a beautiful, well told story. And props to Joshua Williamson because I know I've given him a hard time on Flash, but he did Birthright. He's done a good job with Birthright. It's really one of his really good moments.
Nah, you've given him a harder time on Flash than I ever have. I just looked at it as I liked what he was doing with the Flash. I thought it was really good, but I feel like right now it's just dragging. A lot of it's because of the time travel, and I just don't have the interest in getting back into it. So, hey, Williamson's a great writer, but right now I think he's just kind of running down on ideas. He just has to get to that issue number 100 or something,
I have an honorable mention for a rant. Quick honorable mention. I don't want to violate our rules. I know we said just 5. But there's mermazons in Aquaman. We got mermaid Amazons in the digital version of Aquaman, Deep Tides, with maybe a little bit of a callback to the Flashpoint story where Aquaman's Atlantis was fighting Wonder Woman and the Amazons in Flashpoint. We got mermazons in the deep recesses of the ocean, hinted at in the digital version of Aquaman, Deep Tides. I actually kind of like that. I mean, let's spread the Amazon love. Let's get them everywhere.
Yeah, and Batmandium too. Let's make Aquamandium for crying out loud. Let's just do all that stuff. Yeah. Anyway, the digital stuff is actually the Walmart supersized stuff. So you don't have to buy that stuff if you already bought the Walmart comic book. You already have it. Anyway, so that's about it, eh? I had to wrap it up like a true Canadian, even though I'm not a true Canadian.
I'll keep it to 5. I do have some other little ultra rants that I could think, but I'll keep it to 5 there, and we'll leave it at that. If I had to rank them, I'd say my biggest pet peeve is that I love bitching about and also benefiting from is the speculator market. Because whenever I can get an idiot out there that's willing to pay me more than $10 for my $3 comic book, man, there's a sucker born every minute. I tell you what. They're everywhere. Wow. Unbelievable.
Right. All right. So we are going to leave it at that. Hey, if that red does continue, it'll be on Comic Boom's channel. So you make sure you go over there and you check the dude out. Make that make that red subscribe button into a gray one for him, and hey, throw a like or two at him. Let's try and get this dude over 1,000 for crying out loud. He's deserved it for the past year. So hey, and we're out. Boom. Talk to you later, Professor Bill, and Boom, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.
Boom.